Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the One Team Shirt podcast with myself, Adam Lyon, alongside, as always, Kieran Calderwood and Andrew Milligan. We're just a couple of days away now from the start of the season for Rio as we face Rangers at Rugby Park on Saturday. So we'll be looking ahead to that game in this week's episode, along with a little look back at our League Cup group stage campaign that we managed to get through in first place. We'll look a wee bit at the signing, or the re-signing rather, of Liam Donnelly, which was announced today on Tuesday. And we'll have a wee think about our pre-season predictions and who we think will be the stars and who will be the flops of the season for Kilmarnock coming up. So without further ado, take a quick look back at the last couple of weeks, obviously with our League Cup group stage campaign. We started off with a couple of wins against Annan and Dunfermline. We then lost midweek on penalties, or we drew, and then we lost the penalty shootout to Wraith Rovers, so only getting 1 point out of a possible 3 in that game. And then we beat Albion Rovers on Saturday there to round off the group with 10 points out of 12, which unfortunately didn't get us a place as a seeded team, and instead means we went into the draw unseeded. We'll come to the draw in a little bit. But Andrew, first of all, topping the group, that's got to be a positive, but probably still a couple of questions remain about how we went about it, and some of the performances against lower league teams probably not quite as convincing as we would have liked.
Yeah, it's quite a difficult one to assess, isn't it? Because I think we almost started the League Cup campaign better than we ended it. It seemed, a positive start. Obviously, we were very aware that we were against Annan, who are just newly promoted to League One for the first time in their history. So we were aware of that. But it was a good enough performance against Annan, and things were looking bright. And it was still a decent away performance away to Dunfermline as well. There's a couple of little more cracks in that performance as there was in the first performance, but still a solid away performance against a decent championship outfit. And then the last two games, the Wraith Rovers and the Albion Rovers game, it wasn't as convincing in those two games. However, of course, the main thing was we still got through, and that is all we can ask of topping the group and managing to get to the next round. At the end of the day, that is the aim, no matter how you do it. We've seen other Premiership sides this season fall already, so at least we have been able to get through. But certainly, there is those glaring issues there still. I suppose we've faced that for many seasons now since introduced the group stages. Such a quick turnaround, as Derek McInnes has mentioned himself plenty of times in his interviews during the pre-season and League Cup campaign. It is a quick turnaround to get things ready for the new season, but you've got to say there is still, things that you can tell need improved. Still, players needing to adjust and get used to each other because those performances in the last couple of games, in particular, perhaps didn't quite reach the standards that we're hoping for.
Yeah, Kieran, as Andrew says, there are a couple of things still probably need addressed and worked on. Obviously, the main one was that game against the Wraith in the midweek. We were obviously there, and it was really really poor, and we only just sort of scraped through. Um, that game to get a draw, even to get a point out of that game, then obviously lost on penalties, which was really disappointing as well. What do you think are some of the key issues still facing Derek McInnes? Then obviously selection of a striker is still an issue. Obviously, Kelvin coming back in to score in that Dunfermline game, then he didn't really play a part. In the two games after that. And defence still chopping, changing a wee bit, and some issues over the goalkeeper. So still a lot to work out before Saturday, you would think.
Definitely, yeah. It's just kind of similar to what Andrew was saying. There's something missing, something that's not quite there. We've got a lot of good acquisitions in this window. Obviously, still some time in there as well to grab a couple more here or there. But I still just don't think that we're fully like what is our best team. Like I don't think Derek McInnes knows. I don't really know if fans know like who is our strongest 11. With Kyle Vassell missing, the striker spot is glaringly open for anyone because Ennis Cameron, he's I can't really say too much wrong about him. You get what you get, and he's done some decent performances. Obviously, got that goal against Rafe, which was mostly all in the cross, but again, he had to be there. He tapped it in, so I can't really complain in that regard too much for Ennis Cameron's efforts. But there's just something different Kyle Vassell brings, and my hope is once he returns from injury that things start to take shape a bit more and things start to make a bit more sense. Now that we'd have our leader, like our front man, the kind of spearhead to the whole team. So that's the hope. But just as you were mentioning with the Rafe Rovers game, like, we were saying it in the commentary as well, that the midfield just wasn't there. There was no cohesion. It just felt like defense against attack constantly. There was no midfield battle, and there was just an overall quality lacking in the midfield department.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, Andrew, that Still a couple of players need to come in to try and flesh out the squad, especially up front. You can't have Innes Cameron if Kervisell's going to be injured. Now and again, you can't be relying on Innes Cameron to come on and lead the line. Obviously, Marley Watkins started the game on Saturday, scored a goal, albeit a bit of a deflected one, and maybe a wee bit lucky to get it. But he's probably a good acquisition in terms of coming off the bench. But that's all he's going to be, isn't he? He's not going to start games in the Premiership. You wouldn't imagine, and you don't want Ennis Cameron starting games in the Premiership. So you're probably start looking at another striker hopefully coming in. I know we've got a couple of different things, a couple of negotiations going on, but it's such a hard position to fill, isn't it? Because you're wanting a striker that's going to score 10, 15 goals a season. But at the end of the day, every club's wanting that, and the ones that have them certainly aren't letting go of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kervisell is our main striker. There's no doubt about that. But obviously, we don't know where he's at the moment in terms of his return, how fit he will be for Saturday, and throughout the rest of the season. We can't have all our weight on his shoulders either. That would be unfair on him and be asking too much of him. So we do need somebody else in. As you said, Marley Watkins would be a great squad depth player, but not probably someone you want to be starting each and every game. And Ennis Cameron, as we say, we can never fault his effort, but the quality for what we're looking for to start week in, week out in the Scottish Premiership, unfortunately, just isn't there. So it is hanging on Kervisell's shoulders at the moment, but we will need to get someone in, and I would like to hope we would by the end of this month, when the transfer window shuts. But as you said, it's the hardest position to get. It always is. Every club's looking for them, and as you said, no clubs are going to let their good strikers go easily. So, I mean, it's just so difficult to try and see where this striker is going to come from. Obviously, there's been names touted about for weeks now, but where is this striker going to come from? I'm not sure. We saw Motherwell, I'm sure someone will be challenged with this season, signing Theo Bair earlier on today, and he's somebody who only scored a goal for St Johnstone last season in all his appearances. So and they're trying to replace Kevin Van Veen, who got so many goals for them last year. So it just shows trying to get a striker in is not an easy thing to do, and just hope we find a gem out there somewhere that can get us, a handful of goals next season.
Well, that certainly is the plan. Hopefully, we can get that signed in before the Rangers game, if not in the first couple of weeks of the season. So, obviously, finishing the League Cup campaign, the group stage campaign, 10 points out of 12, as we said. And those two drop points did prove to be costly. Kieran obviously going in unseeded to the draw, which took place just a couple of days ago. I think we all knew what was coming. Celtic at home, probably just about the second or third worst draw that we could have got from that. But that's what happens when you don't beat teams that you're expected to be at home. You drop points and you get landed with a hard draw. And it is a hard draw. Let's not be about the bush. But you've got to beat these teams at some point, don't you? So I guess that's the positive. If you're going to beat them anywhere, then hopefully beat them on home turf.
Definitely, that's the logic that I'm going with Celtic and Rangers. At some point in the cup, you're going to face them. Might as well try and get out of the road. We've got not a lot of advantages, but we've got the advantage of home turf. We've seen it in the past. There's been occasions when we've managed to turn over the old firm. They're at a strange moment right now. Celtic obviously going between two systems. They've just lost Ange and they've just brought Brendan back, so we're not too sure how that's going to work out. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, Brendan, he's got good tactics. He's a smart manager. He knows the league well. So chances are he's going to have the Celtic team firing on all cylinders, ready to go. But you never know. We might catch him on a bad day. I'm not too familiar on how Derek McInnes got on against Brendan Rodgers and their kind of one-on-ones. But it's that way. They're both good managers, and we'll see how they go in this game. So it's a good bit of practice as well. What better way to strengthen a team than by playing against the best teams in the league? And we've got both of the best teams in the first 2 weeks. So a decent test of our mettle and see what we're made of, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Hot on the heels of the draw, we re-signed Kieran's doppelganger, Liam Donnelly, which I'm sure Kieran will be very happy about. Andrew, a bit of a mixed reception to this one. Some fans happy to have him back, thinking he strengthens the midfield. Obviously, came on to a wee bit of a game towards the end of last season, but a lot of people saying, is he just coming back because he went out looking for other offers, didn't get any, and he's come crawling back to us. And I think a lot of people still aren't particularly. Don't really think he's a good addition. I don't think he was massively impressive for much of the season last year. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not as such as Kieran's look like anymore. Maybe we'll have to take that name away after I see that Liam Donnelly shaved his head. But no, I think it's a difficult one to assess. It was a surprising one of that. It's got to be said. When the reports came out this morning, that was that was set to happen, because it seemed like it was same with the Sam Walker situation. It was never addressed by the club. They just seemed to have been quietly let go after contract negotiations, and that seemed to be the end of it. So to see him come back, the days before the league campaign starts is a strange one. It certainly is. It does raise those eyebrows and those concerns of why is he back? Why wasn't he here from the start? There's pre-season missed now. The League Cup campaign all missed as well. So, has he been able to keep himself fit in that time? We know he is a player who had at our time with us has struggled with injuries. So, perhaps how has his pre-season been without that? In terms of looking at his performances over his 2 seasons here, it's difficult to assess. Last year, it's difficult to assess. Certainly didn't reach as many heights as we'd expected at times. Struggled with injuries and performances. Did, as you said, come on to a little bit of a game at the end. So I don't think it's the worst signing. I think we could have done better, but could have done worse at the same time. I think he could be a decent player for squad depth. And it's kind of the position we were looking for, to be honest, that holding midfielder. I think we could have perhaps done better, as I say, but I think there's worse players out there we could have brought in as well. He knows Derek McInnes. Derek McInnes knows him. Derek McInnes clearly wanted to have him back in the first place. It's just a shame how long it's taken, and you do worry about having missed that pre-season, how crucial that could be to him staying fit.
Absolutely. I'm not even going to ask you, Kieran, about it because I know you're the number one, the only member of the Liam Donnelly fan club as
Yep.
it stands. So we'll move on to the game on Saturday against Rangers. Obviously, first game of the season couldn't be much harder. Ever being honest, Rangers had a bit of a mixed pre-season, a couple of friendlies. Obviously, they're not really involved in Europe yet. They weren't in the League Cup, so they've not played too many or any competitive games. I don't think as of yet. Just a lot of friendlies and testimonials and whatnot. Their last game, 2-2 draw with Hoffenheim away from home a couple of days ago. Tavernier and Sam Lammers with the goals there. So, is this a good time to play teams like Rangers, sort of get out of the way early while they're still gelling, while they've not played many competitive fixtures, or during the first game is, they need to get off to a good start. So, the pressure is really on them to get those 3 points in the first game and not lose any ground to their title rivals so early on. So it makes it a lot harder.
Definitely, no, it's absolutely critical. We've seen it over the last few seasons. The second either of the old firm teams drop points, the other one pounces on that gap. That's just how it works. It's quite cutthroat in this league. There is only first and second, really, and then there's a kind of separate league under that. It's been the case for years. We know how it goes. It's kind of they're on their own wee competition, and we're all just trying to chip away at them to get the bonus points for kind of getting one over each other. You would probably say coming into this, because of just how Rugby Park is, because it's a plastic turf, there's that kind of negative mentality automatically from visiting teams. We've seen it, we hear about it all the time about how the pitch is probably not how it should be, but that's that way. It's another arrow in our quiver. It's something else that helps us. Our players are familiar with it. Opposition players aren't, so we'll see how it goes. And your point about the new players coming in, there's been quite a lot of players, I think, like 6 or so, like just quite recently. So there's been quite a lot of turnaround, quite a lot of change in important positions, and it'll be a chance to see how Beale gets on as well with a first kind of full season under his belt. Because if I'm not mistaken, he kind of didn't really get the whole season last year. So see how he gets on with his first transfer window. He's done quite well so far from what we've seen. Some good players. You don't really know where they're coming from, but they look like top tier kind of players that are being brought in compared to the transfer windows prior. And Rangers did a decent season last season, despite not making too many big acquisitions. And now with this season, they've kind of hit some heavier caliber players. So we'll see how they get on. But they've also lost a couple of big names, obviously Alfredo Morelos and Ryan Kent not coming back, away off to Turkey, and I don't know where Morelos is. I think he's still hovering around somewhere in Scotland.
He's outside Browns, I think, and Main Street.
Yeah. No, I was seeing that whole kind of bit when people were kind of maybe thinking, oh, maybe come to Killie, but I don't think that'll happen. But it's probably the best time to face the two big teams. We've seen it in the years gone by. We've managed to nab a wee point here or there on opening day. We've seen it against Celtic back at the first season after COVID. We managed to get a draw against them, but then obviously, end of the day, anything could happen. But I feel silently confident that we might get a wee draw out of the game. We've been kind of picking up form, and we're yet to see what Rangers and Celtic can do because I've not had any competitive fixtures yet. So quite interested by it.
Absolutely. And Andrew, from a Kilmarnock point of view, then is it sort of all pressure off, and one of these cases where anything's a bonus really, and it's just about putting in a good performance, showing the fight, and showing something that will carry on to these games against more winnable opposition.
Yeah, I think so. But you also want to start the season as positively as you can, no matter the opposition you're against. At the end of the day, we know who we're up against, but why not go and get a point to start the league campaign, or perhaps even three if we could as well. So I'm not saying we will, but you just never know with football. I think it probably is the best time to face Rangers, as Kieran touched on. A lot of new players coming in, a lot of old faces that have been there for years departing. So that naturally there's going to be a bit of a you know, implementation period where the new players are going to have to get to know each other. And obviously, they've had friendlies, but friendlies can't compare to competitive games where there's points up for stakes. So perhaps this is the best time to play them, just catch some cold perhaps. But I think Kumar have got to go at it from a positive attitude. We know that we can upset these big teams when we play them at home. Obviously, we weren't able to do so last season, although we did have a close game with Rangers at one point last season. But overall, we've not been able to do that over last season. However, why not go and cause an upset on Saturday, or at least give it a good shot, and not be too downhearted about it and defensive around it, where we just let Rangers push us aside early on, make it a tough afternoon for them, or evening for them, I should say. Frustrate them, frustrate the away fans, because they're quick enough to turn on them if things don't start to go their way. So just try and unsettle them and see if we can start the campaign this new season as positively as we can, if perhaps getting a point or even 3 points if we're catch them on an off day. So you just never know what could happen. But I think Mark's got to go at it from a positive point of view. And, we've had a decent League Cup campaign we've got through. Let's try and get our league campaign off to the best possible start.
Absolutely. So prediction time then. Kieran, we'll start with you. What are you going to go?
Oh, first game of the season, Rangers. I'll be optimistic, and I'll say like a 2-1 or a 3-2. I'll go 3-2. I'll be optimistic.
Andrew?
I'll say 2-2. I was going to say 1-1, but I can imagine I was probably conceding 2. So I say we'll also score 2.
All right,
So I'll say 2-2.
I'll go 0-0 then. We'll try and frustrate the life out of them. And we'll take a goalless draw. A very boring game. We'll go with that. So we'll wait and see.
I bet Sky Sports will be pleased about that.
I know, I'm sure. Absolutely. But we'll wait and see what happens on Saturday. And obviously, we'll all be there and tune in as always on hbsradio.com/football. So we'll just move on to our pre-season predictions. Then we put this out on Twitter earlier tonight. So our sort of predictions from 1 to 12 as to where everyone's going to finish this season. So we won't do too much discussion on it, because we're going to come on to sort of individual predictions afterwards. But for Andrew, he's gone Celtic to win the league. Then the rest of the top six: Rangers, Aberdeen, Hibs, St Mirren and Hearts. Thinks that Killie are going to finish 7th with Motherwell, Livingston and Ross County. The rest of the bottom six before Dundee in the relegation playoff, and then St Johnstone being relegated automatically. Kieran, quite an interesting choice towards the top end of the table. He's gone for Rangers to win the league. And then the rest of the top six: Celtic, Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs and St Mirren. Livingston 7th, Killie in 8th, then Motherwell and St Johnstone before Ross County in the relegation playoff, and Dundee at the bottom. For myself, I've gone Celtic to win the league. The rest of the top six: Rangers, Aberdeen, Hearts and Hibs. And Killie, I've gone for 6th place, a bit optimistic perhaps, but we'll go with it. Then the bottom six: Motherwell, St Mirren, Ross County and Dundee, with Livingston in the playoff place and St Johnstone being relegated. So let us know, as some of you did on Twitter, what your predictions is for the Premiership table at the end of the season, and we'll put out our individual predictions as well that we're going to come on to just now. So we're going to do player of the season first. Who you think is going to really shine, who's going to be the one to come in and really blow everyone away. Also, Danny Armstrong was quite a unanimous one last year. Andrew, who do you think is going to be this year?
I'll be boring and go with the one probably most people end up saying. I'll say Kyle Vassell. I think had a difficult start to his Killie career. Fans questioning whether he was the right man to come in January, but they really at the end of the season kicked on. And and got us some really important goals and some really important play just generally in the game. So it'd be really interesting to see, a full season of Kyle Vassell, how he can, how he performs in the league under a full season, and how many goals he can get as come the final game of the season. So I'm really interested to see how that goes. And I'm optimistic on him. I think he's a really, really good player. And obviously him being club captain now as well, perhaps giving him a bit of more incentive. So yeah, Kyle Vassell.
Yeah, Kieran, and you're not allowed to say Liam Donnelly or Kerr McInroy because it's not going to be them.
Damn. I need to get a buzz cut or go for a baldy to try and blend under for them now. I was going to kind of go outside the box because I was going to say Danny Armstrong's kind of the first one that comes to head, but then Kyle Vassell. But obviously Andrews went Kyle Vassell, so I need to try and scratch my head again and think of someone else. In my head, I was looking at some of the defenders as well, but I don't really know if you want to give Player of the Year kind of contention to one of the defenders. But Corey and Daba, obviously there's other categories as well, so he's probably going to slide into one of those. But Corey and Daba is one of those players that I think he's got something about him. I'm looking forward to seeing him for the rest of the season, but my main pick was Kyle Vassell, to be honest, for the similar reasons that Andrew was saying. But Corey and Daba up there as well. Just from how he's been so far in the season, he's the preseason, he's shown great attitude in defence. We've seen a couple of mistakes in the Raith Rovers games, but instantly he was back on it, chasing the players down that depossessed him to get possession back. Just seems like an all-round decent player, good, confident on the ball. Can go forward, can go back. Just quite a comfortable defender, really.
Yeah, good shout. I'm going to go for Matty Kennedy. I think he's probably been the most impressive player in the pre-season games and in the group stage campaign. Always the one that looks really lively, always trying to make something happen. And compared to Dan Armstrong's been quiet, to be honest, in the campaign. I know he got a couple of goals, but I think Matty Kennedy's probably outshone him on the left hand side, and hopefully back him to continue that into the season for real. So the next one, surprise of the season. So someone that you think will just come, as Dan Armstrong kind of did last season, come out of nowhere and sort of steal the show, or just put in good performances throughout the year. Kieran, we'll start with you first for this one. Then, who are you going for that?
I would probably say Brad Lyons. As long as he continues to kind of get picked, I think he's only going to improve. We've seen how he's gotten on. He's went from stride to stride from the tail end of last season to now being one of the club captains. Obviously, I think it was vice captain. He got like one of the two vices, but even still, like he's leaped so far forward from where he was, considering he wasn't getting a look in. To now here he is starting week in and week out. It'd be interesting to see what midfield that Derek McInnes goes with for the Rangers game. With Donnelly coming back now, you feel like he's probably not going to be a very cheap player to have around. So you don't want to waste a player like that, and you don't want to waste wages to put an expensive player on the bench. So you feel like he's going to be one of the midfielders. Watson cannot be dropped. Don't care what anyone says. Watson has to start, which kind of leaves one midfield position open in McInnes's free back system. So who will that be? If it's Brad Lyons, I think he's going to be one of those exciting players that surprises everyone this season.
Yep, I'm going to be more. I was going to say Brad Lyons as well. For that exact reason. I think everyone sort of thought that everyone thought he was on his way out of the club, didn't he? And then he re-signed. Everyone thought, good squad player. Then he was the captain for the games over in Northern Ireland. Everyone thought, it's just because he's obviously Northern Irish and we're over there and it's nice for him. And then he was the captain in the first game against Annan, and then in the second game against Dunfermline until Kyle Vassell came on, and then we obviously realised that he was going to be captain, but then he's been captain in the last two games, with Kyle Vassell not starting. So I think he's going to have a big year, as you say, and I think he'll prove a lot of people wrong, and he'll be a really important player moving forward. Andrew, anything different? Anyone you got with for surprise that's different from ours?
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout, Brad Lyons, to be fair. But my mind went to Fraser Murray, and I feel like it's a bit of an optimistic shout. Maybe I know he's had a good League Cup campaign, but I do worry that will he be able to carry that on to the Premiership season? I hope so, and that's why I put him as my surprise of the season. I hope that he is able to carry that form from the League Cup over to the league, and is able to find that form that he showed us in the Championship season, where of course he ended up being our Player of the Season that year. So he's able to forget about last season and really shine in this next season, where he's got this new position where he's got a bit of fluidity and freedom in that middle of the park, just playing off the striker almost at times as well. So I'm hoping that's able to getting back to his best. And I'll say it is a bit of an optimistic one, but I think hopefully Fraser Murray surprises the season.
Yep, brilliant. And so the last one we're going to do the sort of opposite end of things. So someone that's going to flatter to deceive this season. So someone that maybe had a good season last season, or has come into the club. You had high hopes of them, and they might just not go as well as you think. They would. Andrew, anyone that sort of springs to mind for you? Obviously, we don't hope anyone is like this, but there is always usually one, isn't there, that comes in and you're excited about, and it just doesn't live up to your expectation.
I really do hope I'm wrong about this one because I was really excited when he came in, but he always was going to come with this extra baggage. Kyle McGuinness. I do hope I'm wrong on it, but we do know what his injury record can be like. He's been okay so far in terms of injury record. Not had a lot of game time. Obviously, started at the weekend, but overall, we've not seen too much from our League Cup campaign. But I do really hope it's the opposite. I hope he can, get some consistent game time for us and really get to his best because we all know, Hibs fans know, St Mirren fans know, him at his best is a really quality midfielder, especially going forward, and offers a lot going forward and creating goals and scoring goals. However, I just do worry it's going to be one of these ones we look back on and think, what if? The same way Hibs and St Mirren have. That's why he's not there anymore because unfortunately, injuries have got in the way of a lot of his career. But I do really hope I'm wrong, and we're not sitting here at the end of the season saying that it didn't go as well as I hope because I do really hope Kyle McGuinness is able to shine for us because I think on his day is a really quality player. But I do have that worry that things aren't going to quite go his way here.
Yep, as you say, a very highly rated player, and he could probably play at a higher level than us. I don't think that's in doubt. But as you say, just injuries have blighted his career, and that's why he's ended up at Rugby Park here. And anyone that you think is going to not have as good a season as perhaps predicted?
Well, first off, I agree completely with Andrew. McGuinness was up there in my kind of list of players that you really want to see do well, but just based on track record, you're not too sure. Another name I would add into that list as well would probably Robbie Dees. Had a pretty unflattering start to his time with Kelly. Obviously, it's early doors, stuff can change, but based on what we've seen so far, considering I don't want to talk down too many of the players, you want them to do well, you want them to succeed as fans. We want to see them go and do the best we can for themselves, for the club, for us, for other fans. But so far, because it's quite a limited list, you would have to say, I would probably think there's might be only one more player you would want to add to that list, being Dennis as well, just based on seeing in his limited time being tested that he was struggling quite significantly especially in the Rafe game. We'd seen him the penalty shootout. Don't want to talk about and just not even able to come for crosses. His dispatching ability just not quite what you would hope from a player that's coming from a Premier League club. Obviously, it's like third or fourth choice goalkeeper at the Premier League club, but still, the point remains high caliber club, high caliber expectations. But my main choice would be Robbie Dees, just based on what we've seen. But we've not seen enough yet from him. And last season, he was fantastic up at Inverness. So hopefully that starts to shine through eventually. But one of those things, jumping from upper tier championship to Premiership football.
Yeah, good. Sure, I'm going to go for something slightly controversial. I'm going to go Stuart Finlay. I think, obviously, when he was here before, he was in a fantastic team, riding the crest of the wave under Steve Clarke. And obviously, the whole team was left. I mean, it made Kirk Broadfield look good into that team at the end of the day. So, is he going to be able to come in here, with a lot of expectation on him? We got to say, probably more excitement for his sign than most in the last sort of, well, since Steve Clarke left, really. That this signing's probably been one of the biggest. Obviously fared okay and did pretty well against lower league opposition. But is he going to be able to lead the team as he sort of did in the Steve Clarke era, in a sort of team that's obviously not got as much quality and not got as much quality around him? He had Greg Taylor at the side of him on one side, and fantastic players like Malumbu and whatnot ahead of him. Dicker and Power to protect. So is he going to be able to recreate those kind of performances in a team that's perhaps battling in the bottom six? That will be the key question. So I don't think he's necessarily going to have a bad season. I don't think he's going to live up to expectation, which are obviously very, very high and perhaps unrealistically high for him from Kelly fans. So we'll wait and see. We'll put them out on Twitter. We'll see what everyone else thinks for player of the season, surprise of the season, and then someone that's going to flatter to deceive. But I think that'll do us for episode 6. Obviously, looking forward to the game on Saturday, kickoff just after 5 p.m. against Rangers. So try and get down if you can, and hopefully get a good result before an away game to Hearts the following week, and then our cup game against Celtic at home. So not a particularly easy start, but we'll try and get through it as best we can. So if you can, tune in to HBSA Sports on Saturday evening. We'll be on air probably from about 5 p.m. there, hbsaradio.com/football, and you can listen to all our inane ramblings as the game goes on. So without further ado, thanks to Andrew and Kieran for joining me as always, and we'll see you for episode 7 just after the Rangers game as we look towards our visit to Tynecastle. So for now, thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.